where we review all the best sports clips from around the country. Now you're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of over there? Because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They talk down to us. They think we're just a bunch of clowns on YouTube, Twitter. But I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and it's turning into something truly, truly special, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing that. So without further ado, let's get to it. We're watching a clip of The Herd where Colin is talking about kind of what's going on with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys and kind of how his like contract, I guess, how the way it was structured, how I guess some of the money is turned into rather than like kind of a salary, it's like bonus money, so it's like a different cap hit. So let's get into it.
But the truth of it is, if you read this story, Dak has really worked the Cowboys. He has a no franchise, a no tag clause, so you can't tag him. He has a no trade clause. Very few guys in the league do. You can't trade him.
Smart.
Yeah, Dak's been a great businessman. I don't think people understand this. Jerry has been worked by Dak. Dak has not delivered on what great quarterbacks do that make that money, and yet he's been paid like it. You can't trade him. He's got a no tag clause. You got to give Dak, his agents, his representatives, massive kudos. I mean, they're not moving off Dak. So my takeaway, if you're not moving off Dak, and they're not going to, first of all, it'd be very hard to upgrade from Dak in the draft. The Cowboys have the 24th pick. So Michael Penix maybe, but that's not necessarily an upgrade. We don't know if Michael Penix is a great pro. You can't upgrade with Dak with Kirk Cousins in free agency. He's 5 years older than Dak, and some of the same red flags, limitations in the postseason. So Dak is hard to replace in the draft or free agency. So to me, the only solution to this is, because he's got so many limitations, you can't tag him, you can't trade him, just get him more help. The first pick for the Cowboys should be offensive tackle. They got to get a left tackle. It was a revolving door last year. Secondly, they have to get him another receiver, because after CeeDee Lamb, they have a very average offensive group. Ferguson's okay at tight end. He's not great. He's good. Serviceable, good. Good young guy, tough kid. But you got to go, I would go offensive tackle, first round, wide receiver, second round. You can probably get a running back, because Tony Pollard's a 2, maybe a 3. But right now, Goff has better weapons. Purdy's got better weapons. Jordan Love's got better weapons. Jalen Hurts has better weapons. Matt Stafford has better weapons. Seattle's got better weapons. They don't have the quarterback. You can argue if CeeDee Lamb twists an ankle, Dallas has some of the worst weapons. I mean, Baker Mayfield, Godwin, and Mike Evans has better weapons. So, I mean, Dak has worked the Cowboys. You got to give him credit. Can't trade him. Can't tag him. So go get him help. Get the most you can get. If you have a car and you can't, you have a house and you put it on the block and can't sell it. Well, then you better upgrade it and make it a quality life. Spend some money on it, and it's where you're going to live. And where you're going to live in Dallas is with Dak.
I think the whole conundrum with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, I find pretty interesting. They're actually in a very tough situation that I don't think a lot of like casual fans maybe realize. Because Dak Prescott is a good quarterback, but I don't see him as this great elite quarterback. People keep saying in the comments, Dak, chokes. He chokes. And they, reference obviously most recently against the Packers. When you say you choke, that means that you're good enough to like succeed and be elite at a high enough rate, but then you couldn't do it in that moment because the moment just got too big for you, right? That's what choking means. I could have done this, but I just couldn't handle the moment. It was too big for me. I got flustered, and that's what happened. That's not what happens to Dak. Dak is just not good enough. He's not good enough to succeed in these intense, high-pressured situations in big moments like the playoffs against really good teams that are going to make it as hard as possible for him, obviously, since these are, you're playing better teams. He's not good enough to succeed at a high enough frequency and volume that makes him elite. I think he can succeed in some of these moments, right? Because he's not garbage. He's not trash. There's some quarterbacks, some players in general, that no matter what, they're just not good enough, right? If they play that game 100 times, 0 out of 100 times, they'll be able to succeed and play well. And then again, it's a spectrum. It goes up a little bit higher. Then there's players that are 1 out of 100, 2 out of 100, 3 out of 100, 4 or 5, and then you get the great elites, the Patrick Mahomes, who are, and again, these are made up numbers, right? Maybe he succeeds 90 out of 100 on a long enough, spectrum, on a long enough timeline. And maybe there's some of these players, right, that, I don't know, they won 3, like, look at Michael Jordan. I think Michael Jordan's an interesting example because he went 6 for 6. Who's to know if he went to another 6 finals that he wouldn't have just won, he would have went 6 for 12, right? It just so happens that the way the numbers unfolded, we got to see the 6 times he succeeded. But I think we can say pretty confidently he most likely wouldn't have won every single time, right? I mean, maybe you want to believe that. I don't, because I just know what's in the realm of possibility, right? Patrick Mahomes, he obviously lost in a Super Bowl and could have lost in 2 Super Bowls. Tom Brady could have lost multiple Super Bowls, but got, very fortunate a few times. So I think with Dak, we've obviously seen his moments, his moments of failure, and they get really highlighted because he hasn't really had true moments of success. And so to me, again, it's just a basic numbers game. If we saw someone, I think another better example of this might be when you watch someone shoot, okay? If you watch Steph Curry shoot in a game, some games, obviously, he's shooting the lights out of it. He's making like 9 threes. He goes like 9 for 14 or just something outrageous. And you're just like, this is the greatest shooter you've ever seen in your entire life. And then there'll be another game where he maybe makes like 2 for 10, right? And if you only saw that one game, 2 for 10, you would say he's a 20% shooter and he's just not good enough. So again, that's why you need, you need more data. You need a long enough timeline. And I think we have seen enough with Dak to kind of reach the conclusion that he's a pretty good quarterback. He's not elite. He's not great. He can't come up consistent enough in these big time situations. He can in some of these situations. He's done it against the Eagles and, a couple other teams that are slipping my mind right now. But he can't do it consistently enough. He can't do it at a high enough frequency of, say, a Patrick Mahomes. Or even like a Joe Burrow for that matter. And that's the problem with Dak. And so the question is what do you do with Dak? Because he's good enough where majority of the quarterbacks that you're going to get are going to be worse than Dak. So the real thing is you have to get rid of Dak in the hopes of finding someone who's better than Dak. Or like Colin's saying right here, you have to stack the roster. You have to get him weapons. You have to do more to make his job easier. And you do that a couple ways. One, by having an elite head coach, which is easier said than done. And then as well as getting these weapons. And in the draft, you can get a game-changing running back and wide receivers like very quickly. Those are positions that they pretty much come fresh out the gate and are legit. Which is the argument then of keeping, a McCarthy. Because McCarthy is capable and can handle that and is not such a mess. Because there's sometimes you go out and get a head coach that you think maybe will be really good because he's maybe an offensive guru or whatever, and he just can't handle the team, right? He can't be a head coach. That happens a lot. There's reason to believe Cliff Kingsbury is really great offensive coordinator, but he couldn't handle it as a head coach. I'm not saying that's true or false, but it's a possibility. We've seen this in the past with other coaches. So I think with regards to that's where the Cowboys are in such a difficult situation, because it's really kind of like, the options are get rid of Dak and try to get a true elite quarterback that can elevate any team he's on. You go out and get a true bona fide, offensive guru head coach. Again, easier said than done. Or you run it back, but try to build the roster up more. But the problem is that what Dak's salary commands, that's the biggest problem, because he demands a salary that is of Joe Burrow, of Patrick Mahomes, of these other great quarterbacks, and he's not good enough to be that good. And he's not as good as Joe Burrow. He's obviously not as good as Patrick Mahomes. He's not as good as Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a hot topic these days, but he's not. And so if you're going to get paid like these players, then you need to be as good as them. And if you're not as good as them, then you need to take less money so they can build the roster, because even Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow needs dudes around him. So that's really what it gets boiled down to. And if he does get an extension, it's going to be a massive amount of money. And, that's the question. It's like, what do you do with that then? Because if he's going to get a ton of money and reset the QB market again, you're then really praying that you're going to get all of these, draft picks and get them for cheap. And you got to make sure that you hit on every single one, right? You got to make sure that the wide receiver you get is essentially like a CD, right? Is essentially like, where you go back and forth between who's the number one receiver. They're both elite. This guy could be a number one receiver on any team. Like you need to make sure that you really, really hit it out of the park and get a dynamic running back that's like, a true number one and someone that can be, a legit game changer, right? So I think that's where the Cowboys are really struggling in this regard, because it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But running it back right now is I just I don't know. And someone was telling me this, and this actually made sense in the comments. We were talking about, what does Jerry Jones want? Does he no longer care about winning a Super Bowl? Because he only has so many years left in his life, right? That's the reality of the situation. And I think for the longest time I was thinking, of course he wants to win, right? He knows that his death is coming. He's not dumb. He knows he's not living for another 20 years. And so he wants to win a Super Bowl before he goes out. I believe that. But I also think that he would rather have this, because the Cowboys are relevant. The Cowboys are still being talked about. People were still talking about the Cowboys winning potentially Super Bowls, who's favored, right? That was still in the topic of discussion really for the last few seasons. He probably at this point in his life rather have that than risk being irrelevant, right? Risk being the Washington Commanders or the Giants right now, because that's the way he wants to go out. Let's say he only has like 5 years left to live, which again, I have no idea how long he's going to live, but let's just say, right, 5 years. He wants to be the Commanders. He wants to be the Panthers. And that's the risk you get by giving up Dak Prescott or trying to make a change. The only way you could really do that is if like there is this big, big mind-blowing trade of like, trading Josh Allen for Dak Prescott, right? A swap somehow, which again, I'm not saying that's even remotely possible, but like that's the only way that you're now guaranteed to get another big quarterback. Because again, just look what happened to the Broncos and Russell Wilson. They thought that was going to be, whatever, we'll pay it and slam dunk. And it ended up being an epic failure for them. And so I think Jerry Jones at this point in his life wants to at least be relevant, because if the Cowboys only have like 4, 5, 6, 7 wins, then, he's doing his press conferences and it's no longer as fun. It's no, he's doing the radio show and it's no longer like, we got this, we can win. He just has to keep kind of defending it every 5 seconds. And so in a way, I don't necessarily blame him. I don't know what it's like to be in my 90s and, close to death. So I can't, I can't necessarily just judge him. But, I think you can't deny, though, that for the most part, he has failed the Cowboys, especially in the last like 20 years, because he hasn't done enough to put the Cowboys in a position to truly compete for a Super Bowl. He's always done enough to make the Cowboys relevant, but never enough to be truly, truly elite and to truly compete for a Super Bowl. And it's always seen that the Cowboys drop the ball or choke, and I don't ever see it as that. It's really that they've just have never been good enough. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this one. What do you think the Dallas Cowboys should do? Please let me know. And please don't forget to subscribe. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really helps with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.